Imagine a world where making a noise gets you killed, yet still thinking a round of Monopoly is a good idea. If it was my family, we'd be dead before reaching free parking. The Abbott family's much more composed though, and is determined to stay alive in a setting full of alien librarians, hostile neighbors, booby-trapped environments, and an endless supply of hearing aid batteries. Seriously though, you need to change those things out like daily. She must have just a chest full of them. Today we'll find out which one of these films is the scariest, the most intense, and the most quietest. That's not a good sentence at all. It's A Quiet Place versus A Quiet Place Part 2 on Reel Rivalries. Mild spoilers ahead. Tread lightly. Lee and Evelyn have it all. The house, the kids, the baby on board quiet box complete with oxygen tank. They have a nice chunk of land out in the country. They mostly keep to themselves too, with the exception of the occasional Lord of the Rings fireside chats with the neighbors. The only real downside to all of this are the insanely fast, highly irritable aliens that kill any sound they hear. Their kids are a sharp bunch too, although I have to say pain tolerance isn't Marcus's strong suit. Look, having a bear trap go off around your ankle isn't anyone's idea of a fun time. But screaming for 3 minutes straight, Marcus? You're just crying for attention at that point. Ironically, the world was always a quiet place for Reagan, who is fully deaf. Director John Krasinski wisely gives us little slices from both movies of her point of view during intense situations. They did have a third child before the new baby came along, but he unfortunately couldn't resist the temptations that a space shuttle always provides. Lee and Evelyn are the main focus of the first story, showcasing how they move around their environment, keep their children safe, prepare for different situations, and just all around being a fantastic team. Speaking of fantastic, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up. Could you imagine if Marvel hired these two leads on to play Mr. Black Bolt and Mrs. Medusa? The fans have been yelling about it for years. Just give them to us already. Anyway, the sequel puts more focus on Reagan and expands the cast a tiny bit more. Cillian Murphy joins her for a bit of a Last of Us road trip. Baby Abbott adds another layer of complication for Evelyn, as newborns are notorious criers. That's something Marcus has in common with them. The trap didn't even hit the bone, bud. Walk it off. Even though Jim Halpert didn't make it to the end credits of the first movie, he still gets to do a little bit more parenting in the sequel's opening flashback. It's just not enough for me. It's like watching the Parr Family without Mr. Incredible. I needed more. I need that whole family dynamic. Quiet Place 1 wins this round. We have more. A film becomes far more intense when you have characters you actually care about. You get invested in their well-being and fear for their safety. Krasinski plays off this angle constantly in the first movie. The family is often separated, making them more vulnerable. Since one false step or a bad game of Uno can set things in motion, every moment counts. The first movie sees our family hiding in a cornfield, dropping into a grain bin, running away from a screaming neighbor, getting spooked by a sus raccoon, and coming face to face with one of the aliens from Stranger Things. Part 2 definitely ups the jump scare moments. Birds fly out from a train, sounding like a Hans Zimmer bass drop. A skeleton conductor plays peekaboo, and an alien tries to catch a ride on the back of a fast-moving vehicle. The most wild scene has to be the now iconic bathtub birth from hell. Evelyn trying to remember those breathing exercises while aliens search the house for even the slightest noise is pretty horrific stuff. This is followed up with her clutching the newborn baby behind a homemade waterfall, attempting to mask their sounds from the eyeless intruder. Baby Abbott had a rough first week. In the sequel, our little infant is tossed around while mommy outruns a pursuing monster, struggles to find air inside of a cramped furnace, and honestly doing its best to stay as quiet as a baby possibly can. We don't see many survivors in the first film outside of the old man who buries his wife. Probably a good thing they didn't run into any sooner, as part 2 shows us just how awful some people have gotten, even using a kid as bait. I'll give her this much, the girl ties a mean knot. While the sequel definitely has more jump scares, I never found myself too concerned for our leads like I did the first. Another round for the original. Let's move on. The first film opens with an amazing introduction to the new world our family lives in. We watch as Lee desperately tries to save his son before he's intercepted by Earth's new apex predator. It only takes a few frames to show the audience just how quickly these new aliens can dispatch us. The family already clearly knows how dangerous these aliens are, and part 2 really spells it out with that opening flashback sequence. This portion of the film is action-packed and easily my favorite section out of the film. We start out seeing Lee pick up some orange slices for his son's ball game, and we also wince as he passes by that same space shuttle that ends up getting his child killed later on. Marcus may have a moment of relief as he's not going to have to watch a third strike go by, but that's not enough to stave off the impending doom that's falling from the sky. This nice day goes from 0 to 100 pretty freaking fast, as we watch a town full of people get absolutely wrecked by these things. The shot of an out-of-control bus barreling down on Evelyn and her kids is the kind of movie magic I live for. The first Quiet Place keeps most of its spectacle to the end. The kids slowly sinking in grain while a monster is thrashing right next to him, that's good stuff. I eat that up. Of course, Lee trading his life for his kids hits hard, especially for any parent watching. Personally, I'd always have a collection of rocks on hand that I could just throw in opposite directions, get the aliens off my scent. Think it's probably okay to bring back the fanny pack for this situation. Strap that baby around the waist, unzip, toss a rock, zip back up, you're good. Part 2 is definitely heavier on the action sequences. We see 2 wild storylines where the kids and the adults go back and forth protecting each other. Evelyn goes all Terminator 2 on one of the monsters, attempting to blow it up, only to watch it T-1000 back out of the flames. Meanwhile, Joel and Ellie are road tripping it to an alien-free island. Turns out these razor-sharp, teeth-filled nightmares can't swim, which feels like a very M. Night Shyamalan thing to do here. They can, however, ride on boats. Cue up the final destructive act as one of the space invaders runs amok in the small community. Reagan and Scarecrow try to make it to the local radio station before Stitch makes a mess out of the entire island. The kids might make a few dumber decisions this time around, but it led to some awesome chase sequences. I guess that's enough for me to give this to part 2. It's very rare when a sequel can live up to the original. While I don't think A Quiet Place Part 2 is the Aliens of the franchise, it does do a great job of continuing the storyline without veering off in some wildly different direction or ruining previously loved characters. That said, it's tough to top an original, which is why I give this to A Quiet Place. I gave you my thoughts, now it's your turn. Give me your winner in the comment, quietly tap that like button if you had some fun, and I'll see you next week on another Reel Rivalries. I think the biggest thing missing in the sequel is John Krasinski shushing people. One of the highlights in the original was just watching him bring his finger up to his lips slowly. In some points, he's so lost in the moment that he doesn't realize his finger is crushing into his nose. That's real dedication to the craft, and it will be missed in later installments.